Now, the EFF in the Cape Town Metro is engaging residents at the COVID-19 informal settlement. Newzroom Afrika's Team Tongana joined us live for more on that story.
We're coming to you from a new informal settlement. It's called COVID-19. We were here some time ago last year when residents started erecting some structures here, and the City of Cape Town's anti-land invasion unit trying to remove them from this piece of land, but it looks like they lost that battle. This is now a fully fledged informal settlement, and we just want to give you then the conditions that people here are living under. I'm going to briefly move out of shot so my colleague can show you what we see in many of these informal settlements around Cape Town, be it new or even old ones. The conditions are very, very similar, and it's the run-up to the local government elections then, and we're starting to see, of course, many political parties campaigning, and what we want to get from them is what services they would then render for residents living in communities like this. What are they promising them as they continue to crisscross these communities to urge voters to vote for them? Now, I have with me the chairperson of the Provincial Chairperson of the EFF. Thank you so much, Melikaya Kego, for your time. We can see that some of your members are giving away pamphlets to the residents here. But what I'm interested to find out is if you were then to be the people representing such communities and these wards, what would you do to elevate or to improve the conditions that we see here?
Thank you very much, Ati, for having us. As the EFF, we first fought for these people when the DA government wanted to evict them. That was the first level of dealing with our people and assisting them. And we have won against the Democratic Alliance in court, and that is why these people are still here. All that is needed here is services such as water. The people here do not have any access to water. They go as far as Driftsend to get the water. As
you know, the Democratic Alliance is majority in the provincial legislature and even in caucus meetings in the city. I mean, the dominance is really the DA here in the city as well as the province. How do your councillors, I remember some time ago, just before the launch of the DA's manifesto, they said that these other political parties, particularly opposition political parties, the councillors sit in the back benches. They are unable then to voice the needs of the people with that much of a backing, considering how small of a number they are inside caucus and even in the provincial legislature. How would you change that situation knowing that the DA dominates?
It's only depending on the power of the vote that our people would utilize. They have been under frustration, they've been under serious bad living conditions because the Democratic Alliance take all the budget to Kemps Bay, Bishop's Court and all these areas. Our people are vulnerable here because of wrongly voting. So our people, it's their turn now to vote for parties that will definitely make sure that they are not backbenchers. They are instrumental in decision making that impacts on their life.
All right, thank you so much for your time. The EFF Provincial Chairperson, Melikaya Kego, giving us a brief take as far as what they would do to improve the conditions of the many people living in conditions like these in and around Cape Town. I'll leave it there for now. For Newzroom Afrika on channel 405, I'm Team Tongana in Cape Town.
Our manifesto is based on truthful observation that our people do not have access to sanitation and proper toilets. Children in rural South Africa continue to fall to their death in pit toilets. It is on this basis that we make a clarion call here on the 26th of September 2021 that we want our land and jobs manje. We want land and jobs namhlanje. We say our land and jobs manje. When I say manje, you must say namhlanje. Land and jobs manje. Land and jobs manje. Land and jobs namhlanje.
leader of the Economic Freedom Fighter, Julius Malema, just reminding you some of the bold and key promises that they have made to their supporters, especially at EFF municipalities that they are hoping to win come November 1st. We have now with us the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Floyd Shivambu. If you want to put questions directly to him, send us a WhatsApp message, 072-110-5584, and we'll put you on and you can have that conversation with him. Floyd, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us today here on In Focus.
Good evening, and thanks for having us today.
Key theme, one would say, of your manifesto is, of course, now, manje, land, job opportunities, economic opportunities, and access to education. How has it been, first and foremost, trying to get that message across with the limitations of the pandemic that is upon us?
Look, the EFF manifesto is actually one of the most expansive and the most substantial manifesto in the history of political campaigning in South Africa, because for the first time, we have dealt with the details of all localities. So because we knew that at some stage there's going to be elections in South Africa, and that they are going to involve localities, we then started to advise the structures of the EFF in all the municipalities, in all the 257 municipalities, to generate demands of the people in terms of what they want each and every municipality to fulfill or to do within a term of office. And then we then got to consolidate that by having community meetings and engagements, but also as national leadership of the EFF got to engage with different sectors. And then the product was this detailed manifesto of the EFF, which has got clear commitments and demands of the people. So this is a people's manifesto that has been generated through a very intense and intensive consultation process that happened. And we're able to, of course, even utilize the online spaces, the virtual platforms for consultations, and to take submissions on social media platforms, and people would email, and some will even send WhatsApp to say that in municipality A or B, this is what we're looking into. So that is why when you look into the details of the EFF manifesto, almost all localities are properly articulated in terms of what we seek to achieve as the economic freedom. And of course, as the economic freedom fighters, and of course, the central emphasis is the question of the land and the question of jobs, because our people are unemployed, and unemployment has worsened even under the COVID-19 regulations and lockdowns. More than an additional 2 million people have lost their jobs, meaning that now we've got 11 million South Africans that do not have jobs. But our people are looking for land. Yesterday, we were having an engagement in Ward 42 in Tanzania, in Buffalo City Municipality. And female members of the communities were saying that if we were to be given access to land, we want to start an ECD that must then complement the schooling system, and then we were able to raise our children in a much more meaningful way. So those are the demands that continue to be made every time that we then get to engage with different people in different contextual situations. So that is basically how we came with this manifesto, that it's a people's manifesto. The people, when they read the manifesto of the EFF, they will see themselves, they will understand that this is truly our demands, not some desktop conceptualization, not some round table of so-called experts who just sit and then conceptualize what are the demands of the people when they've not engaged.
Now, you call it an organic manifesto, not a book of promises. Others call theirs a real manifesto. You'll tell me what the difference is. But let's broadly, and we're going to get into the specifics in a moment, but take a broad view. South Africa's municipality collectively owed, according to the latest numbers, 120 billion rands. This 100 billion of which is household debt. The actual realistic collectible amount, when they punch the figures, is 20 billion rands. That tells you that this is the trend in local government for a number of years, and this impacts on municipalities being able to address governance issues, but also a challenge in fulfilling their mandate. Broadly, without getting into the specifics, we'll do that in a moment. What do you think would be the solution to that, and how does your manifesto address that particular issue?
Look, there is an acknowledgement that we make in the preamble of the manifesto of the EFF. There's a section that deals with the diagnosis of what just are the challenges that confront the local state in South Africa. And the challenges is not the extent of debt which is owed to municipalities or municipalities owe in the manner that it is. The biggest problem of municipalities or the local sphere of government in South Africa is the fact that the fiscal framework, the manner in which the budget is allocated from the National Revenue Fund. So we've got one budget in South Africa, which is responsible for all the things that the government is obliged to do. But almost always, if not always, in the division of revenue processes, the local government sphere is only allocated less than 10% of the entire budget, with the supposition that the municipalities are going to generate their own revenues through rates, taxes, and a variety of other means. But the reality of the situation is that there isn't as much economic activity in a substantial number of municipalities in South Africa. There's very few employed people in the rural municipalities, and as a result, municipalities are unable to collect maximal revenue to then deal with service delivery issues. So almost 70%, if not more than 70% of municipalities in South Africa, they utilize the equitable share, which is the money which is transferred by National Treasury into their accounts for just basic operations and salaries of councillors and staff and paying of consultants and so on and so forth, because the manner in which the fiscus is structured in South Africa and the manner in which the division of revenue process deals with the local state almost puts it in a state of perennial underperformance, perennial incapacity to respond to the demands of the people. We make that critique in the manifesto of the EFF, but then still commits to say that we need to find a mechanism of increasing economic activities at the local level, either through tourism for a variety of purposes, but also by building industry and encouraging the manufacturing sector to devolve industrialization to the areas which otherwise have never had industrialization, but also in areas where there are abandoned factories. We should revive those so that there is meaningful economic activity in all of these areas. But also we make even an additional commitment to say that in municipalities that are home to huge corporations and huge businesses like huge mines, there has to be an engagement with all of those corporations in terms of what becomes the role of the people in that municipality in the downstream and upstream sectors of that particular big corporation, so that we're able to absorb as many people as possible into permanent and dependable employment, which will be the most reliable way out of poverty and suffering that currently defines our people.
Right, we'll come back. I want to touch a little bit further on that. The alternative incomes or revenue streams of local municipalities, particularly in rural South Africa, and those municipalities are more and more dependent on those national grants. We continue in a moment with the EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu to be a part of this and to put your questions to him directly, because in conversation with Economic Freedom Fighters Deputy President Floyd Shivambu. You can be a part of the conversation tonight. Let me remind you again by sending us a WhatsApp 072-110-5584. We'll take your questions live tonight and we'll put them through to the Deputy President of the EFF. Before the break, talking about the conditional grants that come from national and the amounts that are being proportionally then divided to the various municipalities, and raising a question that it has not been equal enough to address some of those needs on the ground. Now, Floyd, SALGA itself, to an extent, admitting that this grant transfer system is not sustainable to an extent. So grant systems, generally, they end up making the local sphere of government quite dependent on national. In fact, if you look at rural areas, by and large, because of the low tax base and collections, that's all they're depending on. So what are you thinking would be a way of an alternative to raise revenue, for example, for a municipality in Guyana?
Look, so, you know, if you closely had monitored what has been the posture of the EFF in terms of the division of revenue processes in Parliament. Since 2014, when we got to Parliament, we have never supported the current fiscal framework, particularly the division of revenue bills that are presented on a yearly basis. We have always objected to the fact that local municipalities are allocated 10% of the fiscus, and we have made substantial policy positions in the Standing Committee on Finance to say, and in the Standing Committee as well on appropriations to say that let us fundamentally restructure how we finance the local state so that it has got the necessary capacity to then deal with all the issues that are mandated to it by the Constitution, but also are the demands of the people. So there's a central emphasis in the EFF manifesto in terms of broadening the economic base of all the municipalities, whether it's in the agricultural sector, in the manufacturing sector, in the mining sector. There has to be a meaningful broadening. There must be active participation by the municipality to make sure that the economy is broadened, so that there is as many people as possible who are working, generating income, and therefore have got the capacity to could pay rates and taxes and pay for other utilities as well that are needed from time to time. And in that way, you are then able to then utilize the revenue that has been generated by the municipality to insulate the indigent, those that cannot work, that do not have sustainable income, and then you are able to then provide free electricity to them, who are recipients of social grants, should still be expected to pay for water and electricity and all these basic necessities, because what government is currently doing is to give with this one hand a social grant, and then they come and collect with the other one the same little amount which has been given, such that poverty then just gets to be reproduced amongst the recipients of social grants, because they do not have access to quality and dependable electricity, they do not have access to water, they do not have access to sanitation, there is no proper refuse removal. So we have to broaden the economic base and diversify as much as possible in all the localities, so that we have resources and money that can be utilized to empower all the people. And that is the program that the economic freedom fighters in all municipalities will be in pursuit of. We are not just going to be administrators of the equitable share that comes from national government. We will come with practical, implementable ideas of what is to be done in each and every municipality. Hence, when you look into the localized demands of the EFF, the localized commitments of the EFF in the manifesto, in each and every municipality, there's a practical project that is said must be pursued by the EFF-led municipality to employ people, to broaden the economic base, to empower as many people as possible, to upskill the youth as well, so that we have got as many young people as possible in employment, because they're the most affected by higher levels of unemployment and poverty. So we have got a very clear plan which is articulated according to each and every locality, and that is how we're approaching these issues. And then, of course, at the center of that is our approach that instead of just giving the little resources that municipalities have to one or two individuals who have won a tender, and then they go and employ very few people who are underpaid, we should build internal capacity of the municipality to be able to deliver services much more directly and in a labor-absorptive format. We can be able to get as many people who are employed permanently by the municipality to look after the municipal infrastructure, to clean the roads, to close the potholes, to do all these things which municipalities are mandated to do. And that is the intention and program of the EFF that is going to be implemented when we take over government.
Let's get in on this question. Here's what you said on formalizing informal settlements.
Yes, we remember that. If you look into the
Floyd, I wanted to address this one. Here's what you said on formalizing informal settlements.
Every EFF municipality will formalize all informal settlements under its jurisdiction and ensure that these areas are provided with services and properly zoned to ensure that houses can be built in these areas in short to medium term. Every EFF municipality will establish municipal-owned abattoirs to support and source produce from mainly black-owned livestock farming enterprises and ensure that these enterprises are provided with extension support services.
All right. Let's be specific on that question. How do you specifically plan, for example, to address that in the Joburg city? I'm told there are 181 informal settlements, according to the Housing Development Agency, 180,000 households, as a 500,000 population, and you only get, what, 320 million rands from the Urban Settlement Development Grant. How do you plan to address all those housing needs?
Now, in terms of Johannesburg, the EFF submission when we went into the Johannesburg City Council has always been about formalization of informal settlement. So there's never been a budget where the EFF did not submit in the city of Johannesburg to say in the following areas, because an informal settlement is not properly organized. People just go and reside there with different sizes of stands and everything else there. What then the city does, because of EFF's guidance and intervention, is to say that let us properly allocate these stands, and then let us have the bulk services installed, such as the sanitation system, proper roads and electricity, water, and all of those things. So that is practically what we have to then deal with. But the budget of the city of Johannesburg in terms of human settlements is far much more bigger than that. It has got far much bigger capacity. They might be gaining in terms of conditional grant access to the 200-odd million rands, but the internal budget of the city of Johannesburg, in terms of what has to be expended to formalize informal settlements, is far much more expansive. Remember that Johannesburg does not fall into that category of municipalities that cannot generate own revenue. Johannesburg can generate its own revenue. It actually gets its total income. It's only 25% that comes from the National Revenue Fund. Otherwise, the rest of the income of the city of Johannesburg comes from the collection of rates and taxes and the sale of electricity through city power and a variety of other activities. Johannesburg municipality has got businesses in the fresh produce market. It has got parks. It has got Johannesburg Property Company that plays also in the outdoor advertising space. It has got Metro Bus. It has got a variety of entities that are income generating activities. The Johannesburg Metropolis Department generates income as well through the tickets which people have to pay when they violated the traffic laws. Yeah. So Johannesburg is in a space that could really formalize all informal settlements, because the revenue base of Johannesburg is far much bigger than the revenue bases of all other municipalities.
How though, Floyd? I mean, the late mayor of Johannesburg presented a 73.3 billion rands budget. By the way, 60 or so billion of that, or 66 billion of that already goes to operations, and it's only the little bit that's left that goes to infrastructure. So how exactly would you do that to address those 181 informal settlements, and how long will it take you to do that?
It's practical to formalize all informal settlements in Johannesburg within a period of a municipal term, like much more meaningfully, because despite the fact that Johannesburg as a municipality is the biggest revenue collector as compared to all other municipalities in South Africa, there's still a very huge scope upon which the city can collect even far much higher revenue in terms of what happens, particularly in terms of electricity. So there are lots of weaknesses that define city power, which if can be resolved, you are then able to deal with these issues. But also the revenue that is generated by the Johannesburg Social Housing Company, if you expand much more meaningfully, have social housing not only in the south of Johannesburg or in the city center, have social housing where there is even higher demand in the north of Johannesburg, because a lot of people are the ones who are committing. All that resources can then be utilized to go and deal with the informal settlements that have emerged in many parts of the Johannesburg city. But also, if you create jobs, you do not have an obligation to then deal with many informal settlements. Right. The reason why you have got informal settlements is because there's highest levels of unemployment.
Floyd,
and if you deal with unemployment,
I've got to take a break. I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that in a moment. The EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu with us. You're a part of the conversation. Send your questions now. 072-110-5584. In focus with the Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Floyd Shivambu, talking about their manifesto commitments to this upcoming local government elections, November 1st. And of course, we'll touch on some of the issues on land, human settlements, but also touch on job opportunities that they plan to create localized in the various municipalities. You've got questions for the Deputy President of the EFF? Send them through 072-110-5584. First, though, a look this hour at what's making news. Political parties, including the ANC, which is gunning for the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, have been campaigning across the country ahead of the municipal elections. Vaccinated South African travellers will reportedly be taken off the UK's COVID-19 red list this coming week. And the presidency is expected to release the names of candidates in the running for the post of Chief Justice on Monday. Conversation on local government elections continues as we unpack the EFF's elections manifesto and the commitments they've made to prioritize land and jobs. The party's Deputy President, Floyd Shivambu, joining us tonight. If you want to be in this conversation, you can, of course, send through your questions, 072-110-5584. Before the break, Floyd, you were talking about, for example, the Johannesburg Metro having the capacity to actually extract more revenue from its residents. One of the proposals that you have put forward is more tax for land and physical property. How are you planning to actually get a buy-in on that, right? Because reforms such as this would need to be linked to tangible benefits for those that you are going to be taxing more.
Now, of course, the quality and form of services that an EFF-led municipality, whether it's in the cities everywhere, will be worth every money which ratepayers will be paying in terms of what happens. But we are then saying that we need to enforce a social compact to then deal decisively with the poverty question in South Africa, particularly in areas where there is huge inequalities, like is the case here in Johannesburg. That we need, because it's within the powers of the municipality to pass the bylaws, but also to give regulations in terms of how we generate additional revenue. And we think that to then cater for people who are helpless, who do not have any form of income, we cannot say rationally as a municipality, as a government, as a political party, that if you do not have money, therefore you must not have access to water. If you do not have money, you must not have access to proper and quality sanitation and toilets and all of those basic things. We cannot say that because you do not have money, you are denied access to all these basic necessities that have to be provided by the municipality. Hence, we then say the rates that those who can are paying should be increased so that we're able to take care of everyone. And in that way, because the agenda is to create as many jobs as possible, we are going to even expand the number of ratepayers. And once the situation has normalized, you can then do not need to have rates that are very high for those that can pay in terms of what is required. So that is our deliberate intention, because we want to achieve meaningful equality in terms of the services that are delivered to all the people, whether they are poor or rich, and that is the intention and program of the Economic Freedom Fighter.
Yeah. What rate will you be taxing the wealthy, and how will you determine the proportionality of it?
You know that the rates that the municipalities charges includes property rates in terms of the value of the property, and then that is calculated as to just how much on a monthly basis do you pay for rates for that particular purpose. But also the municipalities are allowed to sell electricity directly to their own residents. So we can then be able to, when we then, in certain categories, when we then are then dealing with electricity distribution, we know that these sectors have to subsidize those that do not pay anything in the first place. I think also in terms of the indigent policy, which ESCOM has to be aligned with, we have to master the issue of making sure that there's free quality and sustainable, dependable electricity to those that cannot pay it. So all those rates that are otherwise in a municipal sphere of governance are the rates that we're going to then make sure that they are equitable. And equitability means that those who can must pay. Those who can pay must pay so that we are able to take care of all the people in a municipality context. That is the emphasis that we are making.
In a nutshell, let me hear you clearly. You're saying if you don't pay that rate, we'll cut off your electricity. But the people that you're talking about, the Dalimpofus, the Julius Malemas, the Floyd Shivambu of this world, can afford to be off the grid. They can actually use their own solar. They don't need to be connected to electricity.
No, you must remember that outside of electricity obligations, there are a lot of services which are needed from a municipality. There are a lot of services. It's also law that you must pay rates as a resident of any municipality when you have got proper property. It's law. So bylaws cannot be defied by anyone. You can't say that.
But let me conclude. It's bylaws that we pay the e-tolls.
Let me conclude.
Public support is critical to these things. If you're not going to get public support, how are you going to have it done?
You're going to be very confused if you want to speak when I'm still clarifying a point. So be patient a bit, and then you still have the time to ask questions. Also, the time is determined by you. I was saying that the bylaws, there's no such a thing that because you have built your own house and then you're generating your own electricity, you've got a borehole for water and everything else, you therefore are exonerated from paying property rates. We are saying that in the name of equitability, of trying to take care of those that cannot take care for themselves, we need to raise property rates for those that have got the means to could pay for those rates so that we're able to take care of everyone. That is our political, ideological, and moral proper agenda that we're going to pursue in order to take care of all the people in South Africa, because our obligation is towards the people of South Africa. And we know that when you have taken care of the basic necessities of water, electricity, sanitation for all the people, you improve their quality of lives, even when you clean. In the jobs that have been getting from social grants now, they have to utilize that 1,800 as old people to pay for electricity, to pay for water, to then still have to try to have a sanitation system and still have to support children and grandchildren. It becomes burdensome in the manner that it is. So we have to then deal with it in a much more different way. And we're saying that those who can pay must pay. And this also includes the corporations that are not creating as many jobs as possible. The only time the big corporations will be exonerated from huge tax rates is when they demonstrate much more meaningfully that they can multiply the number of jobs that they create, particularly for the people who reside in those particular municipalities. That will be utilized in exchange of the jobs that must be created by each and every corporation.
All right, let's talk then about that issue of proportionality. I mean, current evaluation methods, as it is, are unable to capture a significant proportion of the variations of land and property values. And many people are complaining about that. One house will be evaluated at 1 million, next door 2 million. And they think, how does that happen? How did you reach that value?
No, but that is a technical issue which we have to give a clearer, consistent method to the people who are dealing with it at administrative level. That the valuation of properties, it must not be done secretly. It must be a publicly known process that this is how property is valued and this is how rates are charged. And also by law, you have to have public consultations when you are dealing with all of those aspects. So there will never be any secrecy about it. Everyone else will know that if I buy a property this size in this particular area, these are the rate implications. It's not like some problems. And of course, we admit that under the administration of the ANC, there's been very inconsistent and so disorganized billing system, particularly in the cities, where there is inconsistency in terms of what people will pay for water and electricity and rates, even if they've utilized the same amount of electricity and water over a period of time. So we are going to normalize that, because we have to do that so that citizens are confident of the municipal capacity to then deal with all of those aspects. Hence, part of the commitments that we're making as the EFF is to deal with the skills question, that the people who are occupying senior positions, particularly the senior technical advisors and technical practitioners in the municipality, we're going to deal with those that were employed as a result of political deployment, and then source proper quality technical skills that will normalize all the rates and properly deal with the issue of confidence in the capacity of the municipality to consistently and reliably charge rates that are supposed to be paid by all individuals without the confusion and mess that defines the current government at the local state of the ANC and Democratic Alliance in many municipalities.
Okay, finally on this issue of property taxes, why do you believe that that is a fairer way of taxing people than all the other formal ways of taxing?
Look, you know, if you read the manifesto of the EFF, like from the founding manifesto of the EFF, we have always called for a redistributive tax regime in South Africa that must get to benefit all the people much more meaningfully. So South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. So the gap between the rich and the poor is too huge. Like it's the worst form of inequality in the entire world. And part of the mechanisms to equalize society is to collect revenues and taxes from those that are super rich, because even their wealth is dependent on the entire collective and the natural resources that we have here in South Africa. And we then have to then deal with that. There's many other mechanisms that can be explored, and we'll of course listen to that. But taxation is a proper form of equalizing society in terms of wealth and resource redistribution. It's one of the instruments that is utilized all over the world to gain access to public wealth that must provide quality services to all the people. And we have chosen that as one of the mechanisms that must be utilized to then deal with the otherwise very insignificant revenue basis of a lot of municipalities. But that is not the only solution. What also has to happen is the broadening of the economy so that as many people as possible participate meaningfully in different economic activities. We mentioned, for instance, the president, when he was in the clip that we have played now, that let's revive the abattoirs that were there before. Let us build new abattoirs so that people who are involved in stock farming, they know that there is value that they're going to get out of that. Let us have produce, fresh produce markets that the access is guaranteed to all the people, not just to the select few. That is broadening economic activity, and that is why the issue of the land is directly linked to the job creation intention and program that we are in pursuit of as the economic.
I want us to talk broadly about that.
It's just one of the redistributive mechanisms.
I want us to talk broadly on the issue of land, your individual land reform plan, and how municipal-based land reform is actually going to work. I want to give it enough time. I've got to take a break now. We have with us EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu, and you are part of this conversation. We're going to take your questions in just a moment. Send through on WhatsApp 072-110-5584. Before the break, I said we'll talk a little bit more, Floyd, about your municipal-based land reform targets. How actually are you going to carry that out? Have you done an audit of the various land that is available in the various municipalities? But first, let's hear what the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters had to say about that land question.
Every EFF municipality will have a clear town planning program. Every EFF municipality will conduct land audit of its municipal areas to determine through land ownership details of every piece of land in the municipality, ascertain current land use and expropriate abandoned land and unused land for redistribution to the landless. Every EFF municipality will have its own municipal land reform plan outlining municipal-based land reform targets. These targets will be aimed at resolving urban land hunger in urban and peri-urban municipality and ensuring access to land for housing, urban agriculture, and black-led industrial activities. In rural municipality, these targets will be focused on increasing agricultural production and providing land for housing.
But how are you going to ensure then that particular program does not conflict with policy that already exists at national?
No, in terms of the legislation and the Constitution of South Africa, there are land user rights that a municipality can perform. There's a lot of land which otherwise is under the control of the municipality. In as much as like 79% of the land in South Africa is not in private hands, parts of it is still under the ownership and control. Commander-in-Chief says in the manifesto of the EFF that every EFF municipality will conduct land audit of all the municipal areas and determine the true land ownership. There's also a phenomenon that has got to characterize the different municipalities in South Africa. In Polokwane, in Metsimaholo, in the President district, in the Free State, where municipalities lease out huge properties to private users on a long lease and for almost nothing, where they say that you can utilize this land for a recreational park for 91 years and then you pay 150 rand per year. So that is what we are saying should be handled differently, to say that let us have the municipality to conduct proper audit. And in terms of the zoning of land and expropriation of land, there is a constitutional court case, by the way, which we must go and look into, and the people of South Africa must go and look into, which in certain instances, a municipality can take land for its purposes without compensation in the manner that it is. Like there was a case, I think it included one of the municipalities in the Western Cape, where the Constitutional Court said that in terms of this permissibility, in the areas that the municipality otherwise is constitutionally allowed to control, it can zone land for different purposes and then can shift the land for a common use in most instances. So we'll utilize all these legal instruments. But the foundation of that, so in the first week of us taking over municipalities, what we're going to commission internally is a proper land audit of who owns what in the entire municipality. Because in some instances, like you find in many cities, you have got ownerless properties, like huge buildings in Johannesburg, which do not have any owner, because either the companies that used to own them have been liquidated, or the people that used to own them under apartheid have relocated, they've not got to dispose of those properties. And that is what we're going to start with, so that we then take all the properties that are ownerless and convert them into proper quality social housing for our people who need to reside in cities and in different areas. And of course, in the land that is meant for agricultural, industrial purposes, for recreational purposes, or religious purposes, we'll release that land for those particular purposes. But at the center of this is to have all EFF municipalities having certainty and knowledge of which pieces of land do we control as a municipality, so that the developmental interventions and programs that we're going to lead respond to what we have as a municipality. I think that is one of the clearest articulation of what we're talking about as the EFF.
Let's take some questions then from our viewers tonight. Aubrey joining us on the line. Good evening, Aubrey, and thank you for coming through on In Focus tonight. What is your question for the Deputy President of the EFF?
Hey, Thabo, good evening, and Floyd, good evening as well.
Good evening.
Yeah, my question is, we have heard a couple of times the chief in command of the EFF, Julius Malema, instructing people to take the land unlawfully whenever they see any space. Now, people are staying there in those squatter camps there without any sanitation and toilets. What are they going to do with our people staying that side? Because we see children falling into those toilets there and dying. It seems as if now all the politicians are playing and fooling our people around.
All right, Aubrey, Floyd, you want to take that one?
Look, you know, like let's clarify this clearly. There are so many people who have got to settle in land pieces that were not occupied before, and because of the EFF program, who after they occupied that land, and then the EFF went to fight for the formalization of those spaces, who now have got access to toilets, to water, to proper systems. It's not fiction. Go to Moy Dry in Sasolburg, in Metsimaholo municipality. It was first a land occupation program. It is now formalized settlement. These programs that are being channeled to that particular area, and the EFF is going to even do it much better in terms of making sure that our people must have proper bulk support systems, bulk services that are delivered in everywhere where they've occupied. Because our people are looking for opportunities. What should happen to them? What should happen to people who are landless, have been demanding for this land for time immemorial? And then what should happen to them? Where should people stay? You can't deny people of their land rights. This is a common and collective property of all the people of South Africa. And that program is one of the most revolutionary and correct program that we have pursued. And we do not end there. We say occupy the land, and then once the people have settled there, the law says that if within 48 hours there was no one who came to evict you, there must be a proper explanation on where are you going to be taken to if you are removed there. Then we go after that as the EFF to fight for services to be given to all these pieces of land, because our people must have quality.
All right.
Human settlements. And we are fighting for that as the economic freedom fighters. And in many instances, we have been very successful in terms of driving services to the areas that were a result of occupation. And by the way, if you look into the history of black people settlements in South Africa, in Orlando, which was occupied by James Sofasonke Mpanza, Magebul, it was because of that, but later on with time, Orlando got to be formalized. It's one of the most prominent townships in the entire world because of its historical significance in the struggle against apartheid. Yeah. But it started like that. So to be ahistorical about this is just problematic.
I've got to come in there because we've got more people who want to engage you. Floyd Mutobi in Johannesburg. Mutobi, good evening and thank you for your time. What's your question?
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening, Deputy President. My question to Floyd is that what is the EFF stance in respect of undocumented foreign nationals currently taking lower-level jobs from South Africans? Coincidentally, Floyd has been also talking about our people. By saying our people, does he also include foreign undocumented foreign nationals? And the second part of that question is that the whole issue of service delivery, does the EFF also foresee that it will raise enough funds to be able to provide free basic services to also the undocumented foreign nationals?
All right, Mutobi. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for that call. Floyd, I literally have a minute for you to answer this. So if you go over, I am going to have to interject and come in. But do give us a response to that.
Do you know what the biggest beneficial people, particularly from the entire African continent, who come into South Africa? It's mostly private corporations and these tender people who choose to employ people who are undocumented so that they can pay them lower and insignificant salaries. The EFF's approach in terms of delivery of services is that we're going to insource all these services. And in terms of the major legislation, when we have insourced all these cleaning services, the road construction programs, it is primarily the people of South Africa that are going to be prioritized and given those jobs. That is our agenda. It's not hidden about who are the priority people who are going to be given the jobs in South Africa in terms of what should happen. But that does not mean that we must refuse other people's rights, particularly Africans, to exist in any parts of the African continent. So that is, we're not going to be bullied into a reactionary, counter-revolutionary agenda that wants to make us hate our own African brothers and sisters. The agenda of employment which we're going to create as municipalities of the EFF is going to prioritize people who are registered voters here in South Africa, people who are here with the South African citizenship. That is the priority that we're going to give when we're giving the work which otherwise was performed by the expanded public work programs and was performed by community health workers. Those are going to be prioritized for our people. And you will see when we have taken over the municipality that we're going to create almost full employment because the jobs are going to be galore. The land will be given to the people so that they can reproduce themselves much more meaningfully and have income that is going to take care of them now and in the future. That is why our demand and call is that let us have the land and jobs manje, because we cannot wait any longer.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. We have to leave it there. Floyd, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, as always, coming through and having this conversation with us, Deputy President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Floyd Shivambu. When we continue.